As a final in this one, I'll try to keep it more on your. Well, I want you to put on your strategy hat.
Okay.
If you were in a position, and I think actually in some, even just this kind of conversation, you are in some ways. What would be, and I just want to keep clarifying. I mean, I think to some extent, just like in the United States right now, a lot look like when the forces of war in the United States are in assemblage like this, you do just need to have the extremely clear and efficient anti-war position, because there isn't a great deal of time for any sort of nuance when you're in, a human-created emergency. So I think obviously a lot of energy, in the region is going to be around even just setting aside, various political factions that, God forbid, in the worst case scenario, the United States actually, undertaking that could kill an extraordinary amount of innocent people in Iran, right? So that being said, I mean, but in a way that would be balanced with that, what would be a strategic approach to recognizing that right now we are, that centralizing the resistance to any type of further interference and killing with Iran, but also not allowing the reassertion of an old style sectarian politics to sort of suffocate what had been potentially emerging?
It's a really, really good question. And in speaking to people on the ground in Lebanon who have made so many gains in defeating cult of personality around their particular corrupt clientelistic leaders, saw the reemergence of a mass amount of posters and a trying to re-sectarianize the current movement. And what we're seeing is a counter protest against that in Lebanon in the last couple of days. And I think that it's important that we don't lose sight of those people who are fighting those daily lives, and really trying to tackle the real world consequences of the state in which they live, which are in Iran suppression, the internet being taken down, so up to 1,500 protesters to be murdered. That we focus on human rights abuses, that we focus on freedom of expression, that we focus on the people who are leading these protests on the ground to try and democratize their environments. And if we focus on supporting them, in which encouraging their own government not to launch weapons that might lead to them being collateral damage, first of all, and also to support them politically and to show solidarity, that would be where I would focus 90% of my strategy.
So my question, and this is a genuine, it's something I struggle with and think about a lot, is what is the balance between, I mean, to me, I make a pretty clear distinction. I think clearly in Latin America, there's a lot of governments that have been very controversial, and I think it's either, essentially almost entirely dishonest. Like, Evo Morales was a democratically elected and highly effective leader, and he certainly was, not perfect, as no leader is, but most of the left critiques, quote unquote, were coming either from people who would vehemently oppose the coup against him, or from AstroTurf groups that don't really represent the left, right? Mm-hmm. And I think in the Middle East, it's frankly more complicated in some ways, because of course, Assyria is sort of like a ground zero of all of this, where recognizing the role of the CIA, the role of the Gulf states and Salafist groups, but then also recognizing the role of Iran and Russia and Assad. I mean, this is something we all have to take on at once. And, one tendency can become basically if you are on the other side of the United States, then we'll have just a sort of uncritical, stance, and we can whitewash the problems in various places. I reject that. Mm-hmm. At the same time, there's no doubt that in the day-to-day of popular, I'm not trying to ramble here, but very specifically, it's really important that people in the United States see Nasrallah and the supreme leader saying we don't have an interest in harming U.S. civilians. And I'll make, I make all sorts of, and I can make all sorts of jokes, some of which are tongue in cheek, some of which are honest. I mean, look, I do have a hell of a lot more, infinitely more respect for Rouhani than I do for Trump. Of course, I'm not going to hide the ball on that. Mm-hmm. But the point of showing those clips is not to say that these are perfect leaders or perfect groups, and I don't have, solidarity with people, to the extent there's people on the left, struggling against them, or Baha'is or whatever. Of course not. But the people in the West need to know that. And it is of paramount importance that any propaganda in our context that forward the push to war and assassination be pushed back on. And of course, we know, particularly going back to the Iraq invasion days, that so many even sincere voices who did document the appalling crimes of Saddam Hussein were simply purely operationalized to be an instrument of a vicious, illegal invasion and war. And the same in Afghanistan, for that matter. So I don't know how to thread that needle. I'd be curious your thoughts, because it's something I think about a lot.
Can I sort of say something bold and sort of say, as a person on the left, that generally this is our problem with a number of different issues, that we have to add nuance to the argument, that what we're talking about is a non-essentialization of groups, peoples across a variety of different countries that have different political histories and different social histories, and different groups within those countries that have different leanings and understandings. That it's important that we don't essentialize any of these conflicts, that we keep waving the flag for a deeper understanding about what is going on, that we can have. That we reject the binary understandings of what it means to live and work in Lebanon or Iraq or Iran, and what it means to live and work and struggle under these different regimes if you're different people. What I can say is, then you mentioned about Rouhani, and I think that in the end that we have to be a politics of compromise, is that that we're in this, let's be honest, we're currently talking about this issue because Donald Trump decided to act irrationally.
Right.
We both have serious misgivings about Obama's policies now domestically, and I have serious misgivings about his policies in the Middle East. But what I don't have misgivings for was his commitment to actually working towards a compromise with Iran and a thawing of relations with Iran, because I believe that, yes, the Islamic State of Iran and its government is not something that I would ever proffer or a vision I want for the region. It's definitely not as a secular left guy, completely polar opposite.
Right.
But politics is also not only about like large institutions. Again, that would just be to essentialize the Islamic Republic of Iran are all crazy religious clerics who just want to subjugate everybody.
Ridiculous, right?
Right, exactly. What we had, like, compare Rouhani to Ahmadinejad, okay? Completely polar opposite characters. There's no way that Obama could have been able to compromise with Ahmadinejad because of his, let's be honest, his own Trumpian-like nature and politics. We have to understand that within institutions that there are still moments of negotiation that can happen, that can lead medium and long term towards incremental change. And in a regime like Iran that has deep military capabilities, specifically guided at suppressing its own people, that is about the best that we can hope for at this point. And what happened, torpedoing the nuclear deal, set us on this path to what we're dealing with today. So I would say that we seek the compromises when we can. We definitely reject the essentializations, and we reject binary outcomes like and escalations like war, which will be catastrophic for all the people that we're trying to fight for.
Drew Mikhael, really appreciate your time as always, brother. Fellow at Queen's University. Thanks so much, man.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for staying up. You just watched a Michael Brooks Show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.